Now that we've seen what common sense makes of ignorance, let's find out how to think more effectively about it. We can start with the observation that it's actually hard to refer directly to ignorance, let alone dealing with it impartially. We can talk directly about knowing something, but we can't do the same about not knowing something.
We could directly refer to knowing something. We can say, Allison knows 2 + 2 = 4. And we can say that Allison knows arithmetic. But if we want to maintain the active voice and talk about ignorance, then we're forced to do it by negation. Allison doesn't know that 2 + 2 = 4, or Allison doesn't know arithmetic. Now, if we want to refer to ignorance directly, we have to use the passive voice. Allison is ignorant of the fact that 2 + 2 = 4, or Allison is ignorant of arithmetic. If instead we use the active voice, Allison ignores that 2 + 2 = 4, or Allison ignores arithmetic, then we end up meaning something quite different. The sole exception to this, in English and many other languages, is the verb doubt. We can say, Allison doubts that 2 + 2 = 4, or even, Allison doubts arithmetic. But here we're restricted to expressing a very different, specific kind of uncertainty rather than ignorance, namely an uncertainty that borders on disbelief. Compare these sentences with Allison is uncertain that 2 + 2 = 4, Allison is uncertain about arithmetic, or Allison is uncertain whether she knows arithmetic.
You should be getting the picture. Talking about ignorance and its kindred concepts is tricky. So what I'm going to do now is introduce you to a vocabulary and a framework that can enable you to think and talk about ignorance clearly and effectively. Let's begin with a workable definition of ignorance. It's going to have to deal both with simple lack of knowledge, but also incorrect ideas. We speak of someone as ignorant not only when they simply don't know about something, but also if what they think they know is wrong. It'll also have to deal with the fact that someone is attributing ignorance to someone, be that a different person or to themselves.
So here goes. A is ignorant from B's viewpoint if A fails to agree with or show awareness of ideas which B defines as actually or potentially valid. Now this definition covers both lack of knowledge and wrong ideas. It also handles the attribution issue. A and B may be different people, or they may be the same. And it leaves open the question of whether B thinks A should know something or should not. The notion that A and B could be the same person raises the important question of whether we are aware of our own ignorance. Philosopher Anne Kirwan provided an elegant guide to this issue. First, she observed that we have knowns and unknowns. We know about some of these, but we don't know about others. Then she filled in the table. The known knowns are explicit knowledge. This is knowledge we can communicate or teach to other people, such as how to cook pasta or change a light bulb. The unknown knowns are tacit knowledge. This is knowledge that is difficult or impossible to communicate or teach to others, such as how to ride a bicycle or hold a conversation. The known unknowns are conscious ignorance we're aware of. For example, I'm aware that I don't know how to make my own clothes, or when and how I will die. Finally, the unknown unknowns are ignorance we're unaware of, that is, meta-ignorance. Meta-ignorance is easy to spot in other people, but impossible to see in yourself except retrospectively. For instance, until I read an article about quasicrystals, I didn't know that I didn't know about them. Or when I was about 9 years old, I thought I knew that truculent was pronounced truculent, until my mother informed me that it's truculent. Now let's turn to the matter of vocabulary. There are numerous terms we use in natural language for unknowns. Properly used, they can help organize our thinking about ignorance. In my taxonomy, I divided the terms for unknowns into two groups. First, we have error, which includes all the passive voice terms referring either to the absence of knowledge or incorrect beliefs. Second, we have irrelevance, which includes all the terms that refer to ignoring things. This is the active voice side of ignorance, and refers to things we don't need to know or things we shouldn't know. Under error, we have distortion and incompleteness. Distortion includes erroneous or false beliefs, and incompleteness includes absence of knowledge and uncertain knowledge. Under irrelevance, we have three categories: untopicality, taboo, and undecidability. Untopicality refers to things we feel we don't need to know. For example, most of us, most of the time, don't need to know the distance from the Earth to the Sun. Taboo refers to matters that are forbidden to us. Classified military information is an example where the taboo is enforced by a powerful authority. Taboos can be enforced via cultural or social norms, such as privacy. In many workplaces, for instance, it would be viewed as inappropriate for a superior to interrogate a subordinate about her or his sexual behavior outside of the workplace. Undecidability denotes matters that, in principle, cannot be determined to be true or false. The classical liar's paradox is an example. Suppose I declare that what I'm saying now is a lie. If you decide I'm telling the truth, then I'm lying. But if I'm lying, then of course I've told the truth. Turning now to distortion, we have two kinds. Confusion is mistaking something for something else. If I try to write on paper with my tablet stylus, then I've confused my stylus with a pen. Inaccuracy amounts to misestimating something. I believe I have $50 in my wallet, but it turns out that I have only 20, so I've misestimated the amount of money I'm carrying. Finally, under incompleteness, we have uncertainty and absence. Absence is exactly what it sounds like, missing information. Uncertainty, on the other hand, has three varieties: probability, ambiguity, and vagueness. Probability is uncertainty about whether something is true or whether an event will happen. A juror may think that the defendant probably is guilty, but still not be sure. I may think that it probably won't rain tomorrow, but I'm not certain. Vagueness and ambiguity are related terms that oftentimes are used interchangeably, but I prefer to keep them separate. Ambiguity refers to distinct possible states. So if my friend tells me this food is hot and doesn't say anything more than that, he could mean high temperature or that it's spicy hot. Vagueness, on the other hand, refers to some kind of interval on some sort of quantitative dimension. So if my friend says that he's had several appointments today, he could mean anything from somewhere around 3 to somewhere around 10. So he's being vague in that sense. The sociologist Matthias Gross integrated some of my concepts and those from other scholars of ignorance into his House of the Unknown. Like me, he uses ignorance as a cover term for not knowing, but he also assumes that this is conscious ignorance, the unknowns that we're aware of. Non-knowledge is ignorance that is sufficiently specified that, at least in principle, we could eradicate it or overcome it. For instance, if I have a question, but I also know how to find out about it, then in principle I can answer it. Negative knowledge, on the other hand, is Karen Nor-Cetina's term for knowledge about what we cannot know or don't want to know. So I can never know what my father would have thought about my choice of career because he died when I was only 11 years old. Thus, ignorance can become either knowledge or non-knowledge or negative knowledge, which is a way of saying that ignorance may be reducible or irreducible. Dr. Gross places another term, nescience, outside the House of the Unknown. This term is similar to my concept of meta-ignorance or Anne Kirwan's unknown unknowns. Once we become aware of our nescience, it can become ignorance or even go straight to non-knowledge. Non-knowledge, or reducible ignorance, sometimes can therefore be converted into new knowledge, or at least an extension of older knowledge. But new knowledge also can generate new problems or questions, that is, more ignorance. Neuroscientist Stuart Firestein likes to say that the main business of scientific research is creating better ignorance. And so non-knowledge also is capable of generating further non-knowledge or even more nescience.
So now we have some concepts and terms for talking about different kinds of unknowns. We also have a working definition of ignorance that takes into account the fact that we can't refer to it without taking a point of view. That's very important because ignorance is largely socially constructed. All these terms and concepts are culturally embedded, and they have a history. Well, how is all of this going to help you? First, we're going to be using these concepts and terms throughout the course, so becoming familiar with them is going to be essential if you're going to understand a lot of what's to come. But second, these concepts and terms are based on what people actually think and do when it comes to ignorance. People think and act as though there are different kinds of ignorance, and as if each kind has its own characteristics and its own uses. In the next two lectures, we're going to deepen our understanding of some of the terms we've introduced in this lecture. In the one to follow this, we'll be investigating the concept of ignoring as opposed to being ignorant of. And in the lecture after that, we'll explore the concept of negative knowledge, the limits of what we can know. We'll see you next time.